Well, hello, avid readers. We have a special guest today. I'm so excited to talk with the guest about a brand new release that just came out. But first, Nathan, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello. My name is Nathan Goyer. I am a author and also a game developer as well. I just really like to create fantastical worlds and bring people into them. That is my favorite thing in the world.
I love it. And so, how many books do you have published?
Currently, we have two, and the third one is written, and that will be coming out next year.
Yes. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about Flight of Fate, and I have a copy
No,
here. I know
got it right
Nathan
here
has
as
a
well.
copy, and the cover is amazing. I love it.
hmm
Okay, by Nathan Goyer and Trisha Goyer. I don't know who this Trisha Goyer person
I
is,
know who
but
those people are. Who are those
I don't
people?
know. We're just gonna interview Nathan Goyer today. Okay, so I know Flight of Fate is book two in your series. Nathan, can you tell us a little bit about the genre and why you kind of wanted to write this book?
Yeah, so this is like a genre where we combine history and we combine fantasy. And that's been a really fun place to kind of dive into, where we take the real dates, the real things that happened, and we throw a bit of a twist in them. We're still in Prague during World War II. We're in Italy during World War II, but we're throwing in uh, giant metal robots. We're throwing in mystical cups, so there is a lot of fun, fantastical things mixed in with real history.
I love that. So where did you like come up with this mash of genres? Because I know, um, I mean, I don't know very much out there that's like this, but it's also fun because it's the mystical part, but it's also like the dates and stuff are true. So where did you even come up with the idea of kind of mixing these things together?
Well, I think you would know that better than anyone as we came up to this together. But yeah, so it was bringing in that idea that I was talking to you for a long time, like, oh, you should write more fantasy. You should write some more of this fantastical stuff. And since you already dive into historical fiction and adding your little twist on things, uh, I just thought it'd be cool that you could twist things a little bit more than normal.
I love that. Okay, so yes, Nathan is my son. And yes, we're talking about a book, the second book that I co-wrote with him. The first is
Yes.
Breath of Bones. The second one is Flight of Fate. And the funny thing is, Nathan, like for so long, um, I was very much not the person that was all about the science fiction or the fantasy.
hmm
I know like dad read out loud to you, like Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings series and Frank Peretti's books, which also have kind of that fantasy twist to it. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I'm just listening. And all the Star Trek, Stargate, all those things were always on. I'm like kind of watching it, but doing my own thing until I went to Realmakers and just was like, oh wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And was that surprising to you when all of a sudden I'm like, hey, this would be really cool, Nathan?
I mean, yes and no, because you'd been trying to push me to go to Realm Makers for a long time, and we did get to go and you got to meet all the people there. And I think for you, that's kind of a very relational person, that getting to see the
Mhm.
actual faces behind these fantastical things and thinking that they are cool people and they are Christians and they want to incorporate, God into their stories in some way, even if it's just uh, wholesome and good, solid stories. That I could see how that could win you over in a way, to see that there
Yeah.
are more ways to tell stories and how you can bring in giant robots, but then still have a core truth message into your story.
Yeah, I like that. And I think especially for you could talk more about this, but especially for this younger generation, or I would say I'll say younger generation, although some of my regular readers who are older than me, have read it and like, oh, they love it. So it doesn't have to be just for the younger generation. But why is the younger generation, do you think, maybe more interested in speculative fiction, whether it's fantasy or sci-fi or those types of things?
I think it's just because it's been a shift, that it's become cooler and more free to be a nerd and to be a geek. Even just in the span of my life growing up, when I was younger, if not many people would play video games, not many people would watch those kind of movies, and I've kind of seen that shift where just the average population is like, hey, you know what? This is actually pretty cool. So I think being able to tell those kind of stories and tell real stories in these fantastical ways is reaching the the general audience more just because they're more open to it now than they have been in the past.
Yeah, even when, we went to Universal Studios, they have the Chocolate Emporium, which is this whole, like, three-story restaurant, and it's all steampunk theme, and for those who are familiar with steampunk, it's like gears and pipes, like, if things were in the kind of the steam era, but they just progressed from that, so you have machines and robots, and kinda like the I don't know, almost like the '50s, that kind of going to outer space type of thing, but it's really cool, and I've been shopping different places, they have whole steampunk stores where they have the top hats and the goggles, and so I think you're right that there is, like this is becoming cool and fun and hip. So it's
Hmm.
really cool that generations can, like, connect over this, that it's interesting for younger people, I don't know many young people that might read a historical, novel, a prairie novel maybe with their grandma, but
Yeah,
so a book like this is something like it can span generations.
absolutely. And I think part of it too is, when we had the situations like COVID, I think was a big part
Mhm.
of it, and all these people were stuck inside, and there's not a lot you can do inside except, read, watch movies, watch TV. So I think that kind of opened the door for a lot of people as well to be more comfortable with these, fantastical, crazy stories.
Yeah, okay, so I love it. So tell us the premise behind Flight of Fate.
So Flight of Fate, I'll bring up the book here again just for reference. It's a continuation of the story of Breath of Bones, but exploring a new aspect of the war. Exploring Italy, and we're exploring the mafia and those kind of stories, and also diving into more of the mystical. Because in Breath of Bones, it was very steampunk. It was combining the steampunk World War II, mashing those together, which is just a favorite combination of mine, steampunk and World War II. And but we were able to dive more into the mystical arts. For example, the kind of main artifact that everyone is chasing inside of Flight of Fate is the Farnese cup. This cup that has very unique and very special things that it can do. And so we're getting to explore that, and also getting to uh, continue following the story of Yosef and Katarina for those that have read Breath of Bones, and introduce new characters as well, such as Theodora, who may or may not be involved with the aforementioned mafia,
Hmm.
and also a meek and rather dorky little museum curator named Dante as well, and how he managed to get mixed in with all of this.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that these are based on true history, so, like, the Farnese Cup was something that came from true history, and, it came from me talking to the, Raffaella Romano, who is the curator in Naples Museum currently. We were able to interview him, which I'll ask you more about that in a minute, Nathan, but,
Hmm.
just saying, like, if there was what was the one object the Nazis really wanted? And that would they would, be willing to chase down, and he mentioned the Farnese Cup, because it was believed that it can give you power, and it had these
Hmm.
special qualities. So, it was that conversation that I had with this actual curator even before this book idea came, that just put that little nugget of information in my mind. And so when we're talking about like the Nazis chasing it and really wanted it, this was a true thing. Like they were hunting for the cup. They were looking for the cup.
Yes.
We just kind of, you know, put it in different places. And even when we interviewed Raffaella, I'm like, well, could it have done this? He goes, yeah, no one knew where it was. So it was being hidden. So of course it could have been hidden in Prague or wherever. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so talk about that because tell a little bit more about when we interviewed him because I think there was some things that we came out of that interview where we thought we were going in for some kind of information and came out of it with like more information and kind of put a twist on the story.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting hearing just his perspective on the war and the kind of the stories that come from the people of Italy that you wouldn't probably see in a American textbook, and like the bombings, like how the
Mhm.
Allies were bombing, and they're just like, why are they bombing? We don't really know why we're bombing. We were the first ones to push out the Nazis, so why are they even doing this? And also, like you mentioned, he was telling us a lot of things. Like, and when you asked him what's something that we didn't ask yet, and he brought up the mafia, and he brought up Murder Inc. and all those kind of things that we were able to hear. Definitely stories I have never heard of before.
Mm-mm.
I don't think we ever would have heard of if we hadn't talked to him.
Yeah, and that's so fun to talk to someone, like you said, this totally unique non-American perspective,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes things are summed up in documentaries, and it is often American or British, which we're kinda gonna
Hmm.
lean the story towards our side of how we view things, and just seeing the way he was talking about stuff, and then I think we both kinda looked at each other when he mentioned the mafia because
Yeah.
I have written about World War II, I mean, for 25 years, and I've never come across anything, books, magazines, documentary that has ever talked about the mafia in World War II that played a huge vital part. And we won't give that away because it's a kind of important to the plot of this book. But the fact that it's, of course, it's Italy, of course, Italian mafia. But we just were able to bring it in through some of the characters. We again won't give away too information that just kind of, I think once we understood, because we were kind of struggling with who these characters were, once we understood about the mafia, that was like it just kind of cleared up. Oh, this character is like this, and it became super fun to write.
Hmm. And I think it's too that it's kind of those perspective like the mafia are the bad guys. Why would we want to say, oh yeah, we worked with the bad guys to beat the badder guys? That's
Yeah.
not always a easy discussion to have, and not something you want to always say. In American perspective or British perspective, those kind of stories and those kind of history. This might be something that they would easily exclude. You know.
Hmm. And they even had, because I know some of the mafia later, like they were supposed to be pardoned, and then the Americans were like, "No, we didn't promise that," and it actually ended up going before the Supreme Court, and they had to stand by what they had told the mafia that they would do for them. So it's so fascinating. It's part of history. But
Hmm.
I also know, I mean, Naples is right by Pompeii, and the book actually opens with a scene of AD 79 with Mount Vesuvius
Hmm.
erupting. And I think that's another thing that often people don't realize. Is that during World War II, Mount Vesuvius erupted again, which of course we tied into our plot. And I think people are super interested in Pompeii. And how do you think that added that extra kind of element also, in addition to Naples, this mystical cup, the mafia, then we have Pompeii.
Well, I think that's something that we've explored with all three of the books, even the one that hasn't
Hmm.
come out yet. That we start off by showing these real legends and these real stories, and how we tie those back into World War II. Like in Breath of Bones, it was Rabbi Lowe creating the golem, and when the golem was just out of clay and wasn't a steampunk machine yet. And then with Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, how there were people that were doing rituals and things like that during the eruption of Pompeii, and able to kind of weave that back in to like, okay, so there's all these things happening. Pompeii erupted back in that time when it wiped out Pompeii, and it also erupted again during World War II. It's like, ooh, how could we connect those two events and bring that in? Like, well, there was rituals, and we have mystical things already in the story. So what if we had a special artifact that kind of tied these scenarios together? And I feel like adding that combination of the real history and the real legends as well gives the story a lot of depth.
Yeah, so good. And I think also, when people ask me at least about the book, they assume that you wrote all the action parts, and I did all the emotional parts and came up with the underlying themes. But just talk about that, because I think it was a mix of stuff, but also there was times where I'm like, I don't even know what the theme of this book is, and you're like, Mom, it's this, and I'm like, oh. Like, or you come up with these points, like, I would try to, like, make things easy on the characters. I'd, like, trying to, like, "Well," and you're like, "Actually, no, we can't do that. We have to do better than that." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, my son is, like, calling me and making me work harder." But, like, talk about that because I think it is easy to just assume that different people take roles, but it truly was, like, a combined effort.
Absolutely, it definitely was a combined effort. And just on the part you mentioned about we don't go easy on the characters. I've always found it to be the most compelling when characters are they're just they're having a rough time. Like you can
Mhm,
feel
mhm,
for the characters when they're having a rough time, and it's definitely finding that balance of having the character. You don't want to tip it too far where it's just like straight up depressing, but you want to have that bit of fire in them that keeps them going when the world is just trying to beat them down. So
mhm.
I definitely pushed a number of times of like, you know, no, this bad thing needs to happen to this character. We don't want to lighten the blow. And this
I'm
is a
still
really important
arguing
moment.
about some of those bad things, though. I'm like, "Nathan,
Yes.
no."
And I'm like, yes, we have to do it. We have to do it.
Oh, I'm like, there's one character in particular, he knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, "Nathan,
Yes.
we cannot do this character." And he's like, no, we're done. It's done."
Yeah.
I'm
We're
like,
done. It's done. We're not going back on it. We're sticking with it. And
So, and
then
that's funny though.
yeah. And then about the how we kind of split up the story. Um, you know, you definitely pushed me in a lot of ways as well. You pushed me to write more where I wanted to take the easy way out, and I was like, do we really have to stick to the exact dates? It's like it'd be so much easier if we could do these things in these different orders. And but we were able to find that good balance. And for like you said, that misconception of that you wrote all the happy moments, I wrote all the action scenes. I will say you wrote some great action scenes as well, and I feel like I wrote a lot of
Mhm.
very tender, very powerful moments as well. Like one of my favorite scenes I ever wrote in any of the books was towards the end of Breath of Bones between two characters, a daughter and a father, and that was just it was just a conversation, just a quiet
Mhm.
conversation in a room, but I felt really connected to the characters and really connected to their story and how it's come through the book and how that continued to go grow throughout the next books. That it just more than the giant robots and all the big action scenes and all the things happening, it's just like that scene stuck with me the most. And
Mhm.
then especially the relationship between Yosef and his grandfather Samuel in Breath of Bones was also stuck with me a lot. That was a relationship I cherished and I loved writing about a lot.
Yeah, and I do think that, and that was a fun part of discovery because we would have one document and I would be writing scenes and you'd be writing scenes, and then I go and see what you wrote. I'm like, whoa, like that's not how I imagined that, but that is so good, and it was so neat that um just the different perspectives brought you a uniqueness to it. I think that one person probably couldn't have done. I know I couldn't have done it on my own, so I think
I
that's
could not
cool.
either.
Yeah, the mix of that, and then the true history, I got obsessed with looking up newspaper articles that fit the book, and it was like, I was researching through newspapers.com all these times in history and finding, okay, these are the dates, what can I find that will fit? And there's times where we would make something up and it was actually like, Nathan, this was like a real thing that
Yeah,
happened, or people believe this, or people thought this, or oh, this, we didn't know this happened, but this will make the next part even more important because this is a true thing. And so I think adding, so the if you're ever wondering if you pick up either Breath of Bones or Flight of Fate, there's newspaper articles in there, and it has like what where it was published and stuff. That those are actual newspaper articles from those places on those dates. And
hmm
so I love that we're bringing in true history. These are the things that happened, and this is how the world saw it. So now I'll give
yeah,
this away just because it's at the very beginning of Breath of Bones, but they were in the Czech Republic. they were it was Czechoslovakia at the time, but they were making glass canisters because Bohemia used to be like the head of crystal manufacturing, crystal vases and all these things, and they were making instead these factories were making glass canisters, which we now know were used for concentration camps. At the time, the newspapers thought the Germans were going to do gas warfare. And so I love that because we are looking back on history and we know what those things were used for. And sometimes even the articles that I chose just go to show you that even though certain things were happening, the world didn't realize it or the world saw things
Yeah.
differently. And we know things are different just because hindsight is 2020. And I love that. So sometimes articles are like, wait, why would they think that? Because they didn't see everything.
Yeah.
They couldn't see the world like we see the world now looking back.
They didn't have history books. They were still
They
writing
were
the
living
history.
it. They were living in the history. And also they didn't have, all the satellites and all the videos and cell phone. We just have access to every part of the world at every moment right now. And they didn't have that. They just knew what they saw in their city or in their town or got a report from and maybe the report was wrong. So it's so interesting. Okay. So I have
Yeah.
to know about you personally. Have you always wanted to write? Is this something that you have wanted to do for a long time or where did that come from?
I mean, I would say I have always been a storyteller. Like 100%, I've always been a storyteller. Ever since I was a little kid, I was writing stories. I would play games with my friends with our little toys, and I would come up with these huge arcs of stories of these villains rising up over the span of like months with them, and we'd continue the story and bring it on. Like one example is I had this huge arc with two of my friends, Coulter and Colin, and it was like the rise of King, and he was like this villain, and that spanned over months. Like I would went over to their house for like a week, and I'd planned like 5 days in a row where we would continue this story, and they did it, and they loved it, and they couldn't wait for the next day when we would continue it. And so I've always had that in me. So kind of writing has been just it's a very natural progression of that. Writing is like one of the oldest forms of storytelling, of being able to tell your stories and have it in a permanent physical way, that it's not just you saying it to listeners. It's they can pick it up and read it. Anyone can do that, can pick it up and read it. So I've definitely always wanted to write, and it's been a lot of fun being able to do that. And I just tell stories in lots of ways, like in my video game development as well. I tell stories, and I just I was told recently by a friend that I have good for those who know Gen Z slang, I have unk stories, that I pull out all these unk of my uncle. I have all my unk stories that I pull out all the time, and people really love it when I tell these crazy stories from my life. So it's just it's just who I am. I just love telling stories. I love sharing stories and bringing people with me through all these journeys.
I love that. And I love that even with, back in the day with your friends, you were how old were you during that time?
I would have been like 9, 10,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. Yeah.
I would say like 8, 9, 10. So this is something that has been like a long time of you just making up these make believe. And I remember, I'm the mom. So like 3 little boys sitting in the living room with these toys for hours as Nathan's telling the story, and they're, like, moving their characters along with him for hours. I'm like, it was the best occupying the kids thing that and it was just they were fascinated with it, and you guys are still all friends today.
hmm
But it's cool that, from the beginning, like, God put that in you, and then you're connections with people and just your relationships with people. It's just been very much like from the beginning. And I think some people are just born, they love telling stories, they love connecting, they love sharing with people. And so I think that it's cool that even from an early age you probably, I don't know, did you ever think like I'm gonna get up, grow up and write novels, or was it just something that was just fun to do in the moment?
Oh no, I definitely thought I would write novels one day. I mean, one of the I wrote a couple of small books when I was younger.
I
I
have
guess.
some of them.
Yeah, you still have some of them. Like I wrote one that was a Sonic the Hedgehog story, and I had this unique idea of not revealing that the main character's name was Tails, and by adding a letter to his name each chapter. And like so it'd be like question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, and then next you get T, and then like the first name. Probably not a great storytelling method, but that's what I did, and I ran it around to the neighbors and like read it to my friends and their moms.
Yeah,
Um,
you would, like, knock on their door and, like
yeah, I got a book and I wrote it.
and then they would read it, and you would yeah, come home
Yeah.
and you tell me they loved it, yeah.
hmm And even after that, I dabbled in a number of different novels before, some that even spanned, up to like 40,000 words that will, long since gone on old computers and will never see the light of day. So I've been trying to write for pretty much as long as I can remember.
Mhm. And then you talked about video game development and writing for that, because it is storytelling. So talk a little bit about is there
Absolutely.
some place where people can find some of your games, that they can download and play?
Yeah. I mean, you can find Heedless is the very first game I made completely on my own. That one I kept it more focused on gameplay, though there definitely is this kind of overarching story. It's a story of you know your parents have passed on during a fight with a monster, and you inherit. Once you came of age, you inherit their old adventurer's guild. So it's kind of like it's more of telling a story of the player's choice, of you building
Mhm.
it up the way you want it to be, and bringing in new people, bringing in life to kind of the legacy of your parents of this great adventurers guild they had left behind so many years ago, and even reaching the point, you know, uh, slight spoilers, but bringing to the point of being may be able to face the very same monster that took them out in the
Mm.
first place. And that one can be found on Google phone or not Google phones, Android phones. You can find that on like the Play Store. And then there is one that I made with a close friend of mine called Shade Hunters, and that one is a lot more story focused. It's a that one is science fiction, and telling the story of this chaotic uh, problem that happened within a facility, and all these monsters came out, and kind of getting down to the bottom of it, and finding out what's really going on. Of you're the strike team going in and trying to find out and solve this mystery. And that one you can get on PC. You can find it on Steam. That is a game library and store.
Oh, very cool. And I think I love that you have lots of different ways that you're using your storytelling gifts. So whether it's books or games, but it's always like your mind's always like thinking of the next story or
hmm
planning or plotting. And then book three will be out next year.
Yep.
And the series is the Clockwork Chronicles. And I love these are hardback. So it comes out hardback first, although the audio is available, but the if you take the dust jacket off, it's like really cool gold um gears and everything. I mean, I gasped when I took the camera off and saw how fun it is. And I think it's so funny and cool at the same time that my first like really nice looking hardcover with all these extra elements are the ones I did with you. So
hmm
we
Those
got
are super cool. They did an absolutely fantastic job on this cover and all those kind of things.
yeah, and the Kirk DuPont did the covers, and also we have the characters, in the front of them. So this one is Dante and Theodora are there, and it's so fun, like to picture them, like, oh yeah, that's what they look like. And there's you have an airship on there too, so it's fun to like kind of see the things that we made up in our mind, like on the cover of a book, and then to hear them, in the audiobook. I love listening to the audiobook and hear how the narrator just even adds different emphasis on stuff, and yeah, it's super fun.
hmm
So, can you give any hints of book three?
Book three, we are diving more into, we've had the it is called the Clockwork Chronicles, and so far we had a golem, which the main fantastical mystical creature in the first book, and the second time we had the Farnese Cup. So for a slight teaser, there is a reason why we call it the Clockwork Chronicles, and it may have something
Mm.
to do with a very important clock that is found in Prague, one of the
Hmm.
pieces Prague is known for. And so that might be a little clue on what book three could be about.
Very cool. But the same fun elements all tied together of true history and steampunk
Hmm.
and some fantasy, some spiritual arcs that are going to be wrapping up there. And I think book three definitely took a while for us to puzzle out because we put so many things in book one and two that we wanted to bring closure to a lot of things.
Yes, I was determined. I'm like, I was going through back the first books. I'm like, we are gonna. I hate it when I get to the end of a story, at the end of a series, and it's like they forgot about this, they forgot about this, they forgot about this. I didn't want to forget anything. I was constantly going in. I'm like, okay, even if it's just like one scene, we are tying this loose end. We are not going to leave anything left undone. So hopefully, I didn't forget anything. I'm sure someone might let me know someday that there is a
Yeah,
thread we left untied, but we put in our darndest effort to try
we
and
did.
tie this all together.
We did. I don't even know how many times I kept writing over the chapters. I'm like, I'm gonna read through 'em one more time. Nathan's probably
Yes.
like, stop reading it.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
no.
there's so many details though. So many details. Way more complicated and complex because it is true history and then it's steampunk and then it's fantasy. It's all of it. But I want to hear, I always love asking my guest, Nathan, what Christian novels did they really love or enjoy? It could be a favorite from the past or something that they really read that they think others might like too.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the classics like, Narnia and things like that, but the one that really stuck out to me the most is because my dad always read a chapter to us at night, but and would read us from all these books, and there's all these Christian fantasy, but the one that stuck out to most was the first, I guess, Christian based novel that I picked up on my own to read was The Door Within by Wayne Batson. And that one, it just kind of like unlocked it in my head. I'm like, wait, this is this is a very Christian story. It's very heavy Christian elements and God being present in all of it. And I'm like, you can do that? You can like, you can add that in, and it sounds really obvious, but it was that one being able to see those characters, you know, go on these crazy wild adventures. It was crazy, monsters and magic and all those kind of things, and still have it ultimately be tied back to the character's growth with God. That was just
Mhm.
very fascinating to me, and kind of really got my mind start ticking, and uh, allowed me to really think about what kind of stories I wanted to write as I got older.
I love that, and we had a chance to have dinner with him at Real Makers,
Super nice
and
guy.
yeah, super nice guy, and you were talking to him, and you mentioned, like, one scene that really meant a lot to you, and his face just lit up, like, because you, like, from when you were little, can remember this scene in one of his books, and now you're writing books. I think it's just so cool that you're able to have that connection and get and encourage him, in his writing too.
Yeah, Captain Valisor. He was in book one of the Door Within. I love Captain Valisor. He was so cool.
That's so cool. And so if you have, readers that would like that, what age would you say, Nathan, would those books be good for?
The Door Within. It. I mean, there is death. And there is some violence and stuff. But I would say easily. I would have felt comfortable reading that book. 9, 10, 12. I
Mhm.
feel like it never dips too far. It never goes too far. And there's a lot of real truth that's found in that story as well. So I could say you could be pretty young and read that story and really really enjoy it.
That's good. I love that. Okay. So Nathan, where can, people go to find more information of Flight of Fate or you? Where can they go online?
The best place to find me and information about Flight of Fate would be uh, my Instagram. You can find that, or your Instagram, Church of Glory's Instagram, would be the best places to find it, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, anywhere books are sold, I think Amazon and Barnes and Noble and ChristianBook.com, they all should be carrying it. But
Yeah,
thank you, Nathan, so much. I bet your mom's really proud of you.
I sure hope so.
I am. I am. But thank you, Nathan, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.